So thanks to you who have stuck around. I know it's been a long day. There's been a lot of information shared. We're here to talk about a very non-controversial topic, which is, education reform. I think there were some tired eyes earlier. My good friend, Representative Schofield, when I walked in, and he was sitting there, and he was so tired, and he goes, "My God, that's the brightest dress I've ever seen. Thank you for waking me up." So whatever I can do to do my part to keep you guys awake and here through this last session, thanks for sticking around. My name's Stephanie Matthews, and I'm the Center Director for the Center for Education Freedom here at TPPF. As many of you heard today, and certainly if you're familiar with the organization and the foundation, you know that education is the issue upon which TPPF was founded. It's a passion of all of ours, and I couldn't be more honored to be sitting on this stage with so many of my idols, who I will introduce you to shortly. But again, if you were here earlier this afternoon, you would have heard the governor and the lieutenant governor come give both very impassioned speeches about not only the agenda, but in particular, education freedom, parental freedom. And if you happened to see that there was a large rally at the Capitol today, there was also a plane flying above that said, "Students before unions, hashtag set ed free." There was a lot of Twitter activity going on about that, so that was kind of fun, right? So there's a message that I think might permeate our discussion today. But the focus, of course, is on the students, and I think that's what we are really geared towards focusing on this special session. Certainly during the interim, everybody on this stage is focused on exactly the same, because at the end of the day, it's a simple question. If you do what's right for the kids, you will make the right decisions and legislate appropriately. As the governor said, well, I can't see what he said because I don't have my glasses on. It's about the students, not the schools. It's really simple. It's about the students and not the schools. So again, thank you all for being here today. I will do quick introductions because I know we don't have a ton of time for this panel. I want to make sure we get to Q&A. Sitting to my immediate left, of course, is Chairman Larry Taylor. No stranger to us in this room. He's a tireless advocate for kids all across the state of Texas. 5 terms in the Texas House before he came to the Senate, in which he's not been busy at all as Chairman of the Senate Committee on Education. He's also on Senate Finance, Business and Commerce, and Higher Ed. In his spare time, he advocates for the Texas Gulf Coast. He owns an insurance company, and we were sad that he didn't get to participate this morning and take his son barge surfing? Tanker surfing, even better, this morning, which is a thing, and he has photos. So, thank you for joining us instead. To his left, of course, is Representative Ron Simmons, who, again, is also a great friend to us. Elected in 2013, he's come to education policy. Honestly, both of your parents were public educators, so lifelong experience with that issue, and he certainly pours his passion into it in the House. He is on the National Board of Directors for the Autism Society of America. He serves as the board vice chairman, chairman of the nominating committee, and member of the executive committee. He was voted the MVP of the 2013 freshman class by Capital Insight and served as the chair of the House Republican Caucus Committee. He is also the dad to the conservative millennial, the blogger, which I am not. A millennial, that is. Conservative, of course, the millennial part. And I like and tweet her, retweet her all the time. That's fantastic. I'm sure you're so proud. To his left is our good friend Jonathan Butcher. In addition to being a great friend, he's a blessing to our movement. He's the education director for the Goldwater Institute, and then you're also currently with Heritage. So you're doing a dual, because he doesn't have enough to do either. He testifies all over the country. He's testified on our behalf multiple times here in Texas, and he has great national perspective, expertise, boots on the ground in so many different legislative issues, and especially with school choice programs. I'm an egg geek, and so he's famous to us. He's been on C-SPAN and Fox News and Wall Street Journal, Ed Week, National Review. So we're thrilled that you're here and can speak to ESAs, which you were boots on the ground for the very first ESA program in the nation, correct, in Arizona? So glad to have you here. And finally, last but not least, our great Commissioner Mike Morath, another proud graduate of public education, and obviously they did a phenomenal job because he graduated BBA summa cum laude from George Washington University in a mere 2.5 years. I'm not sure I would have been able to get my foot in the front door there, but congratulations. I think that's really, really remarkable.
I got past remedial education in 2.5 years.
I don't even know if I would have gotten into remedial education at George Washington. He served, as I'm sure you all know, on the board of DISD, did really transformative work there for 4 years before the governor said, we really need your perspective on a state level for the kids of Texas. And he's been you were sworn in less than a year ago, like March of... Little more than a year ago, and already I'm sure you have all seen the transformative changes and enthusiasm and intelligence and incredible communication skills that he brings to the table in communicating extraordinarily complicated subjects to folks like our elected officials and like me who need it to be broken down really, really simply. So we're so grateful for you, Commissioner. We're blessed to have you here today. And so what we're going to do now is take a minute. As you all know, the governor has 4 special session items that fall into the education realm, and each one of our panelists has expertise in differing areas. I don't want this to make you feel like you're on the spot, but we had talked about having, Mr. Chair, that you could start with discussing the School Finance Commission. So again, no secret to any of us in the room, the school finance system in Texas is just broken, and it is not student-centered, it is not teacher-centered, and it's not classroom-centered. Chairman Taylor carried the bill last session. I know that, am I letting a cat out of the bag, that you intend to carry it again in the special. So I'd love if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to talk to us about your perspective, what you see that can come out of this, and what you hope to achieve in this bill.
Well, let's go real quickly through the history of school finance in Texas.
Sure, let's do it.
1940s, the current program we're on. The one before that was 1870. So about every 70 years it's time to look at it. And the system we have today was started in the 1940s, but we started having some lawsuits in the 70s and 80s, Edgewood 1, Edgewood 2. And so we've had all these prescriptive fixes from the Supreme Court. And I kind of relate it to like the cabin on the lake shore that you built way back in the 1940s. And as the family grew, you kept adding on rooms. Well, obviously over that span of time, it was different contractors, different architects. And now you have this very large home that doesn't make any sense. I mean, you flip a light switch here, something else is going on over there. The plumbing is not connected in any sequential fashion. So you call out a plumber, they just kind of throw their hands up and walk away. And I can tell you as a legislator, when I first got here in 2003, anytime we talked about school finance, I mean, it was just somebody in the body knew something about it, and they kind of got up and talked about it, and then we'd all sit there and, kind of until they started passing out the runs. The runs are a list of every district in the state, and so you very dutifully got your highlighter, and you marked out your district and highlighted all the districts within your district, and if it was a plus, okay, I'll vote for it, and if it was a minus, you couldn't vote for it. Is that any way to run school finance? Is any of that ring of efficiency or actually transforming our educational system? We are now well into the 21st century. We have hold harmless agreements that are still in there from the 90s. Our cost of education index is literally from 1990. So we have all these antiquated things in there, and we've had a series of Supreme Court decisions. And the whole time I've been here, we've never had the opportunity to really look at school finance in total. We were always looking at one little part that they just ruled unconstitutional. We need to fix that little thing, and then we keep going down the road. When the Supreme Court ruled that our current system was constitutional but messed up, they actually cleared the air for us. They've given us a great opportunity to really come in now, well into the 21st century, and design a new school finance system for this point and beyond. And I'll never say it'll last forever. Probably another 7 years from now, they'll be back here to talk about it again. But there are certainly things we can do today. The cost of education index certainly has changed since 1990. And frankly, we have all these different weights for English language learners and lower socioeconomic and all these other things we have going on. Well, what are we really doing in those areas that really works versus just throwing money at it? Why don't we look at the schools that are doing a really good job with those students, find out what it is they're doing, find out how much it costs, and let's start making some best practices and have everybody do that. The efficiencies you can gain are several $1 billion just in that alone. But obviously school finance is so complicated. It's not something you can do within a normal, as you know, 140-day session every other year. So we started off this session looking at school finance, knowing that even if we come up with a new plan, we're going to have a transition. So I started off with a bill this session to look at how can we reform our school finance system, even just for the short term while we're going into the next, because we had some things that were expiring this year. You've all heard of ASETAR. ASETAR is nothing more than a hold harmless for school districts that started in 2006 when we had the largest property tax cut in state history. We cut from $1.50 to $1. We had a thing in there that if your district, because the change in that was going to lose money, we'd hold you harmless. Well, when we did that in 2006, that was a snapshot of a district at that moment in time. So if they were doing really well that year, man, this new school finance system has been a great boon to them. If they weren't doing well, that's where they've been stuck since 2006. So that's expiring. In some districts, that's a lot of money. So we knew we had to do something this session. So we worked with my very able staff. Oscar Garza is over here, worked on the school finance. We sent out a request to all these different groups that represent education and work in education finance, said bring us a much more simplified way of funding our schools. Well, we had our first hearing, and they all came together, and we got one that really met the criteria. Because I know also we didn't have a lot of money, right? If you remember the session, there wasn't a lot of new money. We had one, that was the Equity Center. It came forward with a plan that met our criteria, simplified, without having a whole lot of extra money. But the facts were, we live in a political world. That bill, based on the current system we have today to reform and simplify it, politically you have to have enough votes to pass it. Eventually everybody's going to get the runs, and they're going to look at it. To make that bill palatable was going to cost about $4 to $5 billion. So we kind of shelved that for the session, and we kept going through the session, but we had the Public School Finance Commission, bringing together legislators and experts to spend the interim to really delve into this issue, dig deep, and let's find out what we could do. How can we simplify this system and make it work, and frankly, where people back home can understand it, and even more importantly, probably have legislators understand it. So when a bill comes forth before the legislature having to do with school finance, we actually know what we're talking about. You want to talk about the transportation? Well, how much is that going to cost? We're going to adjust transportation and actually know it. That bill passed unanimously out of the Senate, out of the Senate committee, out of the Senate floor, went to the House, passed out of the Education Committee, I believe unanimously, passed on second reading off the floor by voice vote unanimously, and then it was mysteriously postponed 2 or 3 times till beyond the end of the session. I think it was a little pouting match or something. I'm not sure what happened there, but that bill's been put back on there. I'm excited about doing that because that needs to be done. This is a golden opportunity to fix where we are with finance in Texas and come up with a system, one, that does meet the constitutional requirements. We are required to provide a free public education system, but it's also required to be efficient. And we do not have that in our current system. It's just a series of patches or Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids, and it's time to scrape all the Band-Aids off, and let's build something from the ground floor up that actually matches up with all those. We now know what those Supreme Court parameters are. So if you know all those things, when you start building it, you design it to take all those things into account, and we can have a system that will work for Texas.
You're exactly right. And again, bringing it back down to the child and what's efficient and what's effective. And that's obviously been a challenge for decades. Do you expect politics to be at play at all for this one?
Here? I really think the Public School Finance Commission should rise above politics. Everyone should be interested in fixing this. We all hear all these complaints. Well, it's time to put all the cards on the table. And I'm sorry, the facts are, if you look at our budget, Lieutenant Governor's here, I didn't see him. In fact, I'll do this for the people watching Facebook at home. I didn't see it, but when I was in the car, it kept stopping, and I finally had to turn off. I couldn't take it. But anyway, so I'm not sure if he talked about this morning, about the clock. So you know where our budget is. There's not going to be just a waterfall of money coming into the state of Texas for education. We've got all these needs. Our budget is, more than half's already education. This idea about make it a priority, I think we've done that. But we have to squeeze more out of every dollar. And frankly, we have to become not just more efficient, but we need to transform how we do it and get more productivity out of every dollar that goes in our system. And rather than funding all these programs, why don't you find the ones that really work and then fund that program and leave off the rest, and you'll already save bunches of money, and you literally will come up with more money to put into education by way of efficiencies and transforming how we do it. That's what we've done with our whole country. You look around this country, they've had to transform. We're in a global competitive market, and they've had to do things. They're doing much more efficiently, and they've increased their productivity by multiples. We can do that in public education.
There's no question. There's no question. It's not more
This
money.
guy keeps waving this time card at me. Does that mean I've got more time?
Yeah, we got all the time in the world.
Yeah, so it doesn't, I don't think it starts today.
We say often it's not more money for education, but more education for your money. And I think there's ample room for that to take place, and it's an incredible opportunity, and we're grateful for your leadership on that. Representative Simmons, we know your passionate journey with personally and professionally, that you fought for children with special needs your entire career, and you continue to do so, and you continue to be an incredible champion for that universe of kiddos. And we fully believe you were our champion last session with House Bill 1335, and you've already filed a couple of bills for the special. And so take us through what you hope to achieve with what we know is a really personal battle for you, and what you hope to achieve, not for your benefit, but for the other children with special needs of Texas.
Right, yeah, my son's now 32, so we're beyond that. But one thing the experience brought to us was that for special needs children and for parents of special needs children, it truly is a unique need they have in education, meaning that you could have a great public school, and we have a lot of great public schools in Texas, and they could be doing a great job for a particular special needs child. But there could be one sitting right next to him that for whatever reason, their disability's different, the chemistry between the teacher and the student's different, and it's just not working. Well, we have an obligation as a state to also have the general diffusion of knowledge for that child too. And it's impossible for us to do it all at the public education level. We need for that family to have options to choose what's best for that child. That's really all it is. And what we hope to do in this legislative session, and I'm so thankful to Governor Abbott for putting it on the call, is to provide these families that the situation's not working in their public school the opportunity to be able to have some choice. You know, I really get tired of hearing the educrats talk about, well, you're taking our money, you're taking state money. It's not their money. It's not my money. It's just as much as that mom and dad's money of that special needs child who's been paying taxes all their time as it is anybody else's. It doesn't matter for that. And so what Senator Taylor and I will be working on together is we'll be working on special needs education choice, either through an education savings account or through a tax credit scholarship. The governor asked us to file 2 different versions, and I'm actually agnostic. I want the one that works the best, the one that we can get done. And so that's what our goal is to make sure that we can get that ball across the line. I don't have personally, this is not a camel's nose under the tent for me. This is an issue for these small number of families, probably 5,000 around the state, that could really take advantage of this, and it'd be helping them and those children.
Yeah, I can't tell you countless times some of the arguments we hear is, the kid, there will be a mass exodus, and I think really when we look at, and Jonathan will be perfect to help address this, when you look at who actually takes advantage of these, it's a very small number. I've got personally 2 dear friends who have each has a son with Down syndrome, and they said, my goodness, I would never take my child out of the school.
Yeah, because it's working for them.
It's working beautifully.
In a
There's nowhere
special
else.
needs family, one thing that I know from my own experience, if you find anything that's working, whatever it is they're doing, you're going to stick with that, because you have gone through so many things that didn't work, and there's been so much heartache and so much frustration that if you've got something working, you're going to stay with it. It's only when it's not working is there going to be a change called for.
That's right. Well, we're so grateful to both of you for being champions of this universe of kids who need it the most, who really are our most vulnerable, and the devastating impact to our society for not getting them what they need it's unconscionable, and it's our responsibility to help do something about this. And so I believe truly and sincerely the appetite is there across the board. We pray and we'll do anything we can to support you all to help that hopefully we can alleviate some of the politics. So anyway, again, truly grateful, and it's just a great segue to Jonathan, who again has focused his career on education reform throughout the country. Again, he's currently based in Arizona and has worked on, I know he's been part of our coalition, but he's really well aware of how successful special needs programs have been in other states, not just ESAs, but tax credit scholarships, particularly for this community. So Jonathan, I would love if you wouldn't mind speaking to that a bit. Talk about, do you see large number of kids exiting? What is the success rate of the folks that do access? I know we've read that the parental satisfaction of folks who take advantage of these is really high. So if you wouldn't mind just broadly addressing these.
Sure, and thank you, Stephanie. And I know that going back to work for these lawmakers tomorrow in the heat is not the first thing you wanted to do. Folks in Arizona, I think they went home in April, so they were done with well before
That is
the heat
mean.
set in.
That's just mean. Fighting words.
So let me tell you a quick story about a family that I know in Arizona. A young man named Nathan Howard, when he was born to his parents Amanda and Michael, his parents did what most parents will do when they have a young child. They look for those developmental markers that show that a child is on pace, right, with where his peers would be. They look for when he rolls over, when he's up on all fours, when he can crawl, when he starts to walk. And they were looking and starting to check things off. Well, 6 months went by and he wasn't talking. He wasn't making a sound. A year went by, year and a half, 2 years, all the way up until the time he was ready to enter kindergarten. Nathan Howard was not talking. And as you can imagine, his parents were very concerned about this. So Michael and Amanda found a developmental preschool in the public school system to send Nathan. Now, this school was a fit for a time for Nathan, right? They were able to work with him and begin to work on some speech therapy. By the time he was ready for first grade, Amanda and her husband Michael saw that he was just not developing words. He was not learning to talk. So in 2011, when education savings accounts became law in Arizona, Amanda applied for an account for Nathan, and they found a school specific for his needs and were able to use the extra part of their account to pay for educational therapy for Nathan. After about 8 months, Amanda told me, she was sitting on a couch with Nathan, and they were looking at one of his favorite books. And she turned to a page, and Nathan reached out and pointed to a picture and said, "What's that?" And now it was Amanda's turn to be speechless. This is the type of life change that education savings accounts are bringing to children across Arizona, and now there's a total of 6 states in the U.S. that have enacted education savings accounts, 4 of them specifically for children of special needs. So what happens when a state enacts a law like this? Like Stephanie was mentioning, what happens to the students that stay behind? What happens to the public school system? In Arizona today, there are approximately 250,000 children who are eligible for an account. There are about 3,000 who are participating in the program right now. In Florida, the number is similar. There are about 300,000 children, give or take, they have expanded the program since, who are eligible for an account. They have 8,000 using the program right now. So on the one hand, with a brand new idea, with education savings accounts being only 5 or 6 years old, the program has grown and is meeting the needs of the children who have particularly severe special needs. On the other hand, there are 1.1 million children attending public schools in Arizona. So it has not caused what many have said, would be a giant flood or exodus that would cause such a strain on the budget. So we're very excited about what it's brought to the children who are using it, and we're excited now that 6 states have enacted it just since the first bill passed in 2011.
That's amazing, and I know thank you, timekeeper. A couple of things I want to touch on real quick. A couple of things that we hear really consistently is that, but these parents are giving up their federal rights, right? They're giving up their IDEA rights, and that's terrible for them. And I think, gosh, if it's better for the child, they don't care. But I would love for you to touch on that. And then also sort of the private school accountability issue. I mean, hearing from parents, do you hear complaints from them in either of those realms? Maybe speak to those real quick.
No for the second one. And I think the answer is because no one's forcing these parents to do this. No one is forcing them to take their child out. And in many cases, the parents have had a bad experience with a district school, and that's why they've made this decision. By the same token, I've talked to a number of parents who didn't have a bad experience and did it because they knew they wanted multiple options for their child, but they were happy before with the public school that their child was in. In terms of giving up their rights, again, no one's making a parent do this. And so if a parent chooses to do it, they can go back, right? If they take their child out, if they find a school that meets their needs, and the child's happy there and everything works, right? Keep going, right? I can continue.
Right.
The same for the families that are in a public school and are finding the special needs services there. And if they're happy with those services, no one is going to make them leave. It's a key part of the laws that have been written in each of the states that parents can go back to a traditional district school if they're unhappy with the account. And the money can be prorated and all of that to make sure that everyone is made whole again when the student returns.
That's wonderful. So that's interesting that you're saying that even if they're happy, that the appeal of multiple services is a draw to them. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Commissioner, so we'll move on to you. So the governor, we are so enthusiastic about all the education calls he added to the special session roster. A couple of them were relatively new. Ones that at least weren't studied, we weren't involved with studying in depth during the regular session. So with your background and your expertise, and I know you're intimately involved with helping the governor get to what he wants to get to, which I believe is one of your primary goals in year 4 that you list, is of course retaining, recruiting the best teachers, the best principals, because again, the focus is on what's best for the kid, and there's no question that the most important part of child success is the teacher. So first, would you take a few minutes maybe to explain where you see or what the governor was hoping to achieve with the teacher pay and retention, and maybe the status of that, and then we can talk about the flexibility and the update on that.
Sure, absolutely. I have the good fortune of waking up every day and thinking about trying to help roughly 5.5 million souls that are in Texas public schools. That's sort of the all-consuming role that I serve. And I spend a tremendous amount of time traveling around the state listening to parents, teachers, principals, school board members, community members, you name it, on the challenges that our schools face. It is a big and diverse state with about 5.5 million kids in school systems around the state, 8,600 individual schools, over 350,000 teachers. And my experience in Dallas gave me a pretty good perspective on the challenges that our big city districts face. But there's a lot of difference between Dallas ISD and Divide ISD, and we have kids in school districts with roughly 20 total students, and we have kids in a school district with 200,000 plus total students. However, there's some commonalities regardless of where you are in the state, and we know with relative certainty that the single most important in-school factor affecting student outcomes is the teacher in the classroom. And what we do to love on those who love on our kids is pretty darn important. And as I've traveled around the state, we've started to see in the last several years an actual fairly new phenomenon in the state of Texas. And so far it is only afflicting our rural districts in a particularly severe way, but it is actually a problem pretty much everywhere. There are rural districts in Texas now that will post a job opening for a teacher and they won't get a single applicant. And this is a new problem in the state, but it is a direction that we've been trending for years. If you reflect, I reflect when I was a child, and the reverence that we held teachers to in the halcyon years of old in this country. We're at a different place now. When you think about the cliche associated with teaching today, it is those who can do and those who can't teach. There's a fundamentally toxic view of the profession that we have, because teaching is a profession that is as difficult to do as anything I've ever seen. When you reflect on what, let's say, brain surgeons, neurosurgeons do, a neurosurgeon will prep for surgery and will scrub his or her hands clean because years and years of ingrained experience has built that behavior into them. And then they'll think about what they read in the most recent medical journal about this promising practice. They'll think about the scalpels or their lasers that they'll have to use in the surgery. They'll think about the one patient's brain case history that they're tasked with, and they walk into the operating room, and there it is. There's one brain that they're responsible for, and that brain is asleep on a table. And our teachers walk into operating rooms every day, and there are 20 brains or more very much awake and giving active feedback in the surgery that is taking place. And so this question of how do we get the level of respect our teachers deserve? How do we again love on those who love on our kids? How do we support them professionally? How do we retain the best and brightest in our classrooms? How do we attract the next generation of the best and brightest in our classrooms? I was in one of the nice things that I do every once in a while is I get to do the benefit of this thing called the Amilken Awards, where they give out a $25,000 grant to a high-performing teacher. It's a really lovely event. All the kids are in this school auditorium. And so I did this in San Antonio not too long ago, and it was a middle school with, say, 400 or 500 kids in the room, middle school. And I asked the kids, how many of you want to be a teacher? And 6 of the kids raised their hand in an auditorium full of 400 or 500 kids. And then I said, well, the highest paid teachers in Dallas can actually make $90,000 a year. How many of you would like to be a teacher? And then half the auditorium raises its hand. Moving something as complicated as the professional esteem of a profession as big and diverse as teaching is complicated. But what we do respect in this country is money. And can we reward, can we commit to rewarding teachers financially with a value commensurate that they provide to our kids? That I know is key to what the governor's call is can we in fact look at the nature of the school finance system, look at the nature of our support systems for teachers so that there is a way to offer the best and brightest instead of a $250 sort of across-the-board raise, maybe a $5,000 raise year over year over year for people who are truly changing the lives of students in Texas. We have several data points now, both in the state and around the country, that lead us to a policy conclusion that the answer is yes. Yes, we can make this change. We can do so in a way that is affordable. We can do so in a way that substantially increases teacher satisfaction and teacher retention. And very seriously, if we do it at scale, changes the narrative about recruiting into this profession. There was a study done several years ago of the top third college graduates around the country. And the single biggest reason that they chose not to be teachers is the money. And professional satisfaction is driven by a lot of things. Money isn't everything. We're blessed to have missionaries working in our schools. But should we set up a situation where teachers have to choose between taking care of their own biological family versus investing time in the family of others? Can we do that? And I think the answer is yes. I'm excited that the governor has put this on the call and that the legislature is entertaining this because it is the single most important issue keeping me up at night about our schools.
Could not agree more, and that's so well said, and we're so glad that you're at the helm of this issue because I think we can all agree the money is important, but I think all of us that have children know that we do need to love on the teachers who love on our babies, and that it's not just money, but teachers want to be able to teach. They want to be able to do what they love, and they want to be honored and rewarded for their success. And I think some of the conversations that you're having and some of the opportunities that you have where it's not just money, but it's also that they can be mentors to younger teachers. And there are the intangibles, I think, that are such a critical part of that get to the heart of who these folks are that are really performing brain surgery on our children every day. I've never thought about it that way, and that's terrifying. I'm going to go re-interview my kids' teachers next year. But I just think it's amazing what you're doing. I'm so glad that the governor brought this to our attention. I think it's a really important conversation, and I think it also opens up the rural-urban conversation. I think opens up incredible opportunities for teachers in those areas as well. So when there's not a teacher that's available to teach in a rural area, let's look at better virtual options for these communities, right? I mean, if I know that consolidation is such a bad word, and nobody wants to disrupt their school or close or consolidate, but there are teachers all across the state that are amazing and do amazing work in their classrooms, whether it's Dallas or Houston, that can go to dime box, right? I mean, those opportunities are there, and so I think they're all part of the equation. But I am so grateful for your work on this. I think it's a really important issue, and we look forward to working with you. Anything we can do to help, we certainly will. Does this mean we're time for Q&A? Okay. I'm sorry, was I not? Oh, just two questions?
I'm
Oh,
a school teacher, so I keep hearing a lot about giving more money to schools. I left a six-figure job and I'm in the 52,000 bracket, and I honestly like doing it because I enjoy teaching. I enjoy going in. I teach reading specialists for pre-K to actually kindergarten now to fourth grade students. And the kids have been very successful, and not because I'm a great teacher, it's just that my enthusiasm for reading, I want to encourage that onto them. And to me, getting a student that comes in from a private, like Idea Academy, because they weren't able to teach them, and they were special needs students, and them learning their ABCs in 1 year and going from first grade to a fourth grade level in reading, it's not because of me, it's because the child learned. Second, I keep saying, hearing, okay, more money, more money. If you already have a limit, if you have a teacher, why would you want to put more money into? So I think you need to add to the profession. I went from a six-figure job to earning about half, but it's not about money. It's about the love for instilling an education to the kids. And, you know, I teach them not just the reading part, but teaching them to think for themselves. Unfortunately, that happens. And I keep saying, I honestly have to, because you're the commissioner, I have a lot of really good friends that are teachers, and they leave the teaching profession because of all the new teaching ratings that they have to do. Like this year was my first year where I had to go for the T-test. I honestly had no idea what artifacts were. And that's the problem. The principals didn't know, the assistant principals didn't know. Every school district, every school within the district had a different way of rating things. And when it takes me more time for me to develop whatever this rating system was than for me to actually prepare to teach a class, then there's something wrong with the rating system. Thank you. Sorry
Thank you
about
so
it.
much. God bless what you do. I appreciate your passion.
Thank you. My name is David Fincher, and I think it'll be a great victory whenever we pass Education Savings Account for children with disabilities. But I'd like to ask you, how will you keep that from being an empty victory for those families that need to use it but will find that there's no place they can use it, or it's not enough for them to be able to do it?
And that's a great question, and I think we probably will, and Mr. Butcher may be able to address how some of the other people do. I think that generally when the supply, or when the demand is there, supply rises, so I think you will have some of that. I think there will certainly be some lower income students, families that will qualify, but it will not be enough. And I think we have to look even to expand other opportunities. I think we have to look at maybe in addition to ESAs, some type of scholarship program that these folks can apply for. I think it's going to have to be a community-wide effort if we really want to help the low-income special needs families.
And if I could just add, it's true. This is not going to be the panacea for every child, but it's going to reach a lot of kids. And the fact is, once you start doing it, some schools may figure, well, you know what, let's figure out how we can make this work. We get some more of these kids in here, and they may get some grants from people that they know and be able to expand their operations. The thing is, once you open the door, I think it will improve from that point forward. It's going to be hard when you first get there, but And I got to say something about this camel's nose on the tent. We are talking about a puppy's nose under the tent that may grow into a small dog. Okay? I mean, this camel, I mean, we've had states that have had some school choice for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. The top take-up rate is about 5%. Is that fairly accurate?
I think that's accurate, yeah.
5%. So you're 95% is still, and this idea that if we take one child and they get the opportunity to go do what they would need to do for that child's situation, that it's taken away from somebody else, is just a fallacy. This is a win-win. Just like right now, one child's parents move to another district for something that's better for them. Nobody talks about anybody losing, but that parent and that child got a better situation, and everybody moves on. We have 80,000 new students a year moving to this state. We're talking about 6,000 special needs parents maybe getting another option. 80,000 come in. This is a drop in the bucket just in the growth, not to mention the 5+ million students we already have in our schools. But the idea when we start this, there's going to be people it doesn't fit, but I guarantee people will find a way. And also we've heard stories of parents going to work 2 and 3 jobs to pay for the difference, to give that child the opportunity they need to succeed.
That's exactly
Thank you.
right.
I just
Thank
wanted to
you.
plant that seed about
That's exactly right. Thank you so much, sir. Yes, sir.
A few comments and a question about the approach and how you got to look at the budget. As I said earlier, 6th-generation Texan. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. I went to McAllen High. We only had one high school, which included a tremendous vocational program. When I look back at my yearbook, I look at the fact that we had a staff, and out of the entire staff for the school, nurses, principals, counselors, et cetera, more than 75% of the staff were teachers in the classroom. And I got a great education. I didn't graduate top in my class, but was good enough to apply for early acceptance in a good college that was in the Ivy League category. And it was a great education. One of the jobs I had with Texas Instruments, worldwide training manager for field service and their computer business worldwide. And in 3 years I did that job, I increased training delivered by 30% and cut the budget by 25%. So as you approach this problem, look at some of the other comments been made, about, like zero-based budgeting, and also look at the approach. Before you can actually figure out what it costs to provide an education, you have to decide what the deliverable is. And what is really required to provide our youth with an education. Not necessarily a social engineering training program, but a real education. And then you can take a piece of paper and figure out what that deliverable costs. And I think if you take that approach, you're going to find out the cost of the education is much less, and you'll have all the money you need for all of the special needs people.
Excellent point. I think that was one.
Well, the most telling statistic on that is, if you ask educators how much do they need, they can't give you an answer. They say that's not enough. So if we add $2 billion, that's not enough. And we're now spending over $10,000 some odd dollars per child, and that's not enough. They just know it's more. I mean, when they could tell me an exact number, that if we had 11,000, that would be enough to give every child in Texas grade. All right, let's get to 11,000. But every time we add more, they just keep moving it out. It's always just a little bit more than whatever we just did. That's where this importance of the School Finance Commission is. What do we want that child to know at the end of their 12 years? We want to add, all different facets. It's not all college. Some of it's career training, all these things. But what does that cost? And then let's work towards that. We back off from knowing where we need to be, how much does that cost, and come up with real numbers, not just throwing more money until somebody says that's enough, because they're not going to ever say that. So that's really the challenge we have, is how much does it really cost to give a child a great education, and all different kind of kids, and all different and different situations in their own personal areas. We need to be able to give every child in Texas an opportunity to succeed wherever they are, and whatever skill set and gifts and talents have been given by their Creator, and go forth and do well. And that's our job. But it's not just chasing a number and just keep throwing more money. You talked about the number of teachers versus administrators. I think that's what you're referring to. It used to be like 3 to 1, teachers to administrators. Now it's 1 to 1. So we've got a problem.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's what we hope to learn through your commission. And so no pressure. It's just the entire, school finance system. Just
I sleep well.
good. Okay, we'll do these last two, and I think our time. Do we have enough time to do these last two? We don't. But no, we don't. We really don't. Oh gosh. We're happy to connect with you guys afterwards. I'm so sorry about that. I know Kevin had some final closing words, and again, if y'all want to stick around, I'm so sorry. I'm not good at that.
How about another round of applause for our panel? Representative Simmons did not leave so I could stand in front of his chair. He sends his apologies. He had a meeting up at the Capitol. We knew we had a tight schedule. Commissioner, Mr. Butcher, Mr. Chairman, Stephanie, great job. This was really, really good, so thanks. What I wanted to mention is gratitude. So the Texas Public Policy Foundation wants to be involved in defining the conflict, identifying what solutions will give us policy legitimacy. Your presence here, your feedback, is very helpful to us. So thanks for taking part of your day and part of your week being here. Secondly, let me say that if you like this kind of thing, please mark February 7th to 9th, 2018 on your calendars. February 7th to 9th, 2018. We do an annual policy orientation that spans a few days, and I'm sure many of the people that you've seen speak here today will be there then. Thanks again for being with us. God bless Texas.